the real estate sector. According to Grohe Hurun India report on real estate, India is accelerating to become the real estate capital of Asia and is pushing away China in terms of the growth rate as well. To discuss more on this report, takeaways and the real estate sector outlook, we have Rahman Junaid, who is the founder and chief researcher, joining in now. Mr. Rahman, thank you very much for joining in. If you could just give us a sense in terms of what the basis of your report is, which indicates that India is probably going to even surpass China in terms of growth when it comes to the real estate space.
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity. I think this list, the Grohe Hurun Real Estate Top 100, is a list of most valuable non-state-run Indian real estate companies. It's been the growth that we've saw in the list over the last year has been nothing short of spectacular. For example, the overall value of the companies in the list have grown by almost 70%. The threshold to enter the top 100 has gone up by 30%. Even if you look at it from a rich list standpoint, if you look at the top 10 wealthiest realtors, that number to enter the top 10, the number has grown up from about 5,000 crores to almost 14,000 to 15,000 crores now over the last 6-7 years. So it's been a spectacular growth. And since we asked about China, I just want to give you some numbers in China as well. So we published something called the Hurun China 500, which is China's most valuable 500 companies. In that, the threshold, in that we've listed out a list of real estate companies with a valuation of $3 billion US and above. And this year, that number, which is the list of non-state-run Chinese companies with real estate companies with a valuation of $3 billion US and above, that number is 10 this year. And in our list, that number is 15. So even if you look at the super valuable companies, real estate companies with $3 billion US valuation above, that number, we beat China, right? On an absolute terms. In growth terms, even if you look at the billion-dollar real estate companies, just take mainland China, for instance, that number was about 100 a couple of years back, and the number has come down to 30. But it's a list of billion-dollar real estate companies in China. Whereas in India, when we put out the list in 2021, number of billion-dollar companies, listed companies that we could find was about 17, and that number has grown to 36. There is growth when it comes to super valuable real estate companies coming in India. And when you compare an economy like China, it's not, we're definitely beating in terms of growth rate. And when you look at $3 billion US and above, we have beat them in terms of absolute valuation as well.
Anas, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining in. You know, China as an economy is plagued with issues of its own, right? There are plenty of regulatory hurdles that the real estate developers there are facing when it comes to liquidity and a lot of other issues. A couple of them have already filed for insolvency, some of the big ones there. So do you believe that with the headwinds that China is facing, India will most certainly outpace China in terms of growth, considering the fact that the sector here may have its own regulatory watchfulness, but it does not have that kind of this thing as China does?
No, so I was talking to the global research team yesterday, but and I went back with resounding optimism that we'll definitely beat from an overall standpoint. But China's real estate sector is much bigger than, even at this scale, it's much, much bigger, even if you look at private and everything put together. But one thing that's clearly visible in the trends is that India's RERA has really worked out in our favor, and I can really speak about it from our list numbers, not looking at the other macro reports, right? In 2017, when we put out the real estate list, I think the number of the billion-dollar companies from the real estate sector that time was about 10 to 12, and now it's about 36. Even in 2018, the first real estate rich list, the top 10 threshold was about 5,000. Now it's about 15,000 crores. So you can really see the growth across from an Indian standpoint. And that numbers are not really working out well in China. And we've been, just take last year, for instance, right? We've added almost 80 plus billionaires to the Hurun billionaires list. And we've seen unprecedented wealth creation from an India rich list standpoint too. Whereas China lost a lot of billionaires. And if you take that as a yardstick, that is trickling down in terms of overall wealth creation in the country as well. there is definitely some headwinds in terms of economy and wealth creation and so on. But in India, it's the other way around. We're going up across all sectors, and that's having an impact on the real estate economy as well.
Okay. Which is the market in India that you would probably be most bullish on in terms of price as well as volume growth in FY25?
I'm not fully qualified to comment on that, but it's very similar. If you look at the top three real estate economies, it's very similar to the India rich list that we publish. So in India rich list, the top three wealth-creating cities are Mumbai, Delhi NCR, Bangalore. That's the sort of big three, and that's very much reflective when it comes to the 2024 Grohe Hurun India real estate top 100 as well. It's Mumbai, Delhi, and NCR and Bangalore. So they three will continue to grow. But one interesting point that I would like to share here is that, again, I'll go back to the list when we put out about 7 to 8 years back, 2018, the first list came out. The number of national level brands, that is the brands that were built in a particular state and which has gone beyond their local geography, that number was about 5 to 6 in our list perspective. That fast forward 7 years now, number has gone up to almost 60%, almost 60 companies. So I could really see that local heroes who've created the brands in their respective states, they're now going more national, taking advantage of the brand that they built and expanding overall across the country. So my point is, even if some of the markets, Bangalore or Delhi, or they would continue to do well, but you would also see some of these homegrown brands in these respective cities going to tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, creating more projects there and so on.
All right, Anas, we leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining in and sharing with us your views on the real estate space.